Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me. Hayden Howerton along for the ride as well. And we have a lot to get to. But guess what? We were off last week as far as previewing a football game. So what do we do on our usual first show of the week? We're going to talk about all the football that happened elsewhere, but also we'll talk about a huge weekend for SMU. We'll preview Senior Day a little bit and more on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast that starts right now.
Remember when your biggest worry was finding parking at Dallas Hall? Now it's protecting your home, your car, maybe even that first business. That's where Northwest Insurance Agency comes in. Exclusive coverage designed by Mustangs for Mustangs who've galloped into the real world. Protect what you've built and move forward with confidence, because once a Mustang, always moving forward.
Northwest Insurance.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
That is right. Happy late Monday night for those of you listening to this. I'm Billy Embody. Hayden Howerton. Cowboys up 24-9 on the Raiders right now as we are starting this podcast off, presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Appreciate Mark Villasana and his team for always supporting our Mustangs and everybody in the DFW area and beyond. 214-352-5656 or info@nwagencies.com is where you can find him and his team who are there waiting for you to check over your rates, coverages, and more. We appreciate him. He was in the building in Moody Coliseum Saturday as well to watch SMU take on Butler and get that win. But Hayden, we really wanted to kind of riff a little bit on this podcast. We've got coast to coast to get to. We've got a ton of SMU storylines, but let's start a little bit here with this football team coming off the bye week. They spent that bye week getting out on the practice field a little bit healthier than you would think, but also in a bye week, are you not kind of taking, I don't want to say your foot off the gas, but you're really making sure your team isn't hitting the right guys in a sense with how beat up this team is this year?
You're not taking your foot off the gas in a sense of, all right, we're not going to get better over this sense. But for guys that are very beat up, you know, you look at Kevin, who's been dealing with an ankle. You look at some of the guys on the offensive line that have been beat up. You look at the running back room of really, okay, if we're going to practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as a team, probably those guys are only practicing one of those days, or maybe they're in a red jersey for a few of those days. So I look at it in a sense of you're still preparing to go beat Louisville next week, but you're also looking at the next at least 3 games with the guaranteed bowl game at this point, as SMU is bowl eligible, but hoping that you're going to be able to get to Charlotte. So you're having to kind of look at the big picture versus just the week to week. And I think Rhett Lashley does a really nice job of that. He's 5-0. As a head coach of SMU, of getting out the other side of the bye with a win. And I look for that trend to continue next week. And we'll get to our Louisville preview coming up. But overall, Billy, on the bye, I mean, you've covered this team for a long time now. And I just, knowing Rhett Lashley and knowing how he was as a coordinator and from what I've seen as a head coach, he's going to be smart with how he takes care of his best guys.
No doubt. And I think you're seeing a little bit of a shift, and maybe you shed a little bit more light on this because contrary to popular belief, you're the one that did suit up at times in the NFL. I did not. So you know a little bit more about how these guys are managed, how they want to get those bodies to game day. I mean, when you're talking about star players or key contributors, there's a part of it where you've got to practice. You've got to hit that practice field once. Maybe late in the season, they might let that slide for certain guys, but SMU's at the point with some of these players in particular that I feel like are banged up, that if a Logan Parr, for example, I'm not saying he did or didn't or whatever, practice all last week, guess what? If he was ready to go, he would at least suit up and they would see if they maybe needed him at minimum, or they would just go ahead and roll with him and see if he was able to go and contribute in a positive manner. Sure.
I mean, I think about Kelvin Beachum in this sense of great friend, former SMU Mustang, but with the Arizona Cardinals, he's one of those guys in his 13 plus years in the NFL that you get to the back half of the season. All right, you've probably seen this edge rusher at least 10 times, especially if you're in the division. of, okay, you know what the game plan is. You're a really smart guy. You understand what's going to be needed on Sunday, where it doesn't make a lot of sense to go out on Wednesday and Thursday and beat up his body. So Beach was one of those guys where you looked at to have veteran day off, at times, even during training camp, but you did it so that way he could get to the games on Sunday and still be able to perform at a high level. I think Logan Parr is a great example of that, like you just brought up. I also think maybe Matthew Hibner is a guy in his senior year of, okay, he's been at these big programs, he's been in big time games, of maybe they take the gas off of him. He's not really a guy, knock on wood, that has been on our injury report. When you're looking around at some of these other guys, he did have something earlier in the year, but overall, he's probably one of those guys that I would look at of, hey, let's get the reserve players a little rest this week.
And you need to do that because you've got two critical football games to get to. And I think as much as, like, you could diagnose the season in so many different ways, right? Like, we know the early season flaws of this defense. We know, how they needed to get better. And the offense wasn't, without fault either. There were a couple games there. You think about that TCU game, you think about the Missouri State game where they did not click as well as they needed to win the football games. They didn't get above 30 points in the TCU game. And then they might have just barely hit 30 against Missouri State. Maybe they did or didn't, but it wasn't a clean performance earlier in the year. But I don't think with how this schedule played out with playing 6 straight football games and getting to that point, getting to this bye week, that wasn't, something that really hurt this team. It was more of kind of happenstance with where Wake Forest maybe was on the schedule and, having to go back out to the East Coast maybe. And Wake Forest just kind of wanting that game a little bit more. SMU maybe a little caught off guard, what have you, not executing. That's why they got tripped up. But this bye week was perfectly placed for this team to go out these next 2 weeks and accomplish what they need to. Now, Rhett Lashley's done a great job, like you mentioned, coming out of the bye, but they're going to have to be maybe over-prepared in a sense for a team like Louisville that is talented, that is absolutely getting banged up in the worst way. Like, I don't want to say I think they'll come out like Boston College did against Georgia Tech, but I could see that type of a fight as kind of a last-ditch type of effort of a sort to kind of spoil SMU season, to make a statement in the ACC before they play Kentucky. And then you've got Cal, who's just kind of been up and down and playing a little bit of spoiler. So I think this bye week just as a whole came at a really good time for this football team.
Yeah, SMU's been very fortunate as far as the scheduling has gone the last few years. I really like where our buys have landed. Now, this past 6-game stretch that we went on, first time that SMU's ever had to play 6 straight power conference opponents. And that is something, as this team becomes more established in the culture of, really, you're still in the infancy of being a power football team. When you go into future years and this becomes the norm, guys are going to understand how to handle that a little bit better. Guys going into that Wake Forest game after a very emotional win against the Clemson Tigers. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we played Miami the week after. We talked about it the entire week that it was going to be a trap game. And I'm not saying that the team didn't know that as well, but like you said, maybe some of the coast-to-coast travel, maybe some of the just emotional high paired with coming into a really sleepy stadium at Wake Forest. But ultimately, that does end up being an excuse for the underperformance. All I'm trying to get at is when this team gets more mature in the sense of they've been in the ACC for 5+ years, you're going to understand that comes with the territory of these emotional ups and downs. But in power conference football, anybody can beat anybody. So to your point about being over-prepared against Louisville, I don't really know if that's possible. Maybe from a physical standpoint, if you just go out and put guys through the meat grinder this week, yes, I think you can be over-prepared. But mentally, you had some time off. You were able to watch them play last Friday night against Clemson in a very close ball game. You're able to watch extra tape. You're able to just get extra meetings in of, okay, how are we going to beat and exploit these guys in what they do? So, Billy, I'm looking for this SMU team, and we'll get to the official preview for Louisville, but just to come out feeling a little refreshed and ready to go with 2 games left in the regular season.
Yeah, speaking of refreshed and ready to go, how about that stash of yours? Share the backstory behind that. We have a friend of the show, of course, that it's a good reminder of.
So Casey Kroll, who's one of my good friends, I talk with him fairly regularly. He actually introduced me to No Shave November. I think it's transformed into Movember for the stash, but ultimately it's for Men's Health Awareness Month. So our 99.9% male listeners on this show, take care of yourself, get yourself checked, talk to people, go see your doctors, do everything that you need to do to ensure that you live a long and healthy life like I'm trying to do in the post NFL career. But so he inspired me to do this. I did send him a picture when I did this the other night, but it is something that it's funny. People laugh about it, but ultimately it does a good job of raising awareness for men's health.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. It broke the ice. When I saw you pop up on the video stream, I was like, "Hey, what is that?" And he was like, "November, of course." And we chatted about it a little bit. And it's a good reminder for everybody out there watching on YouTube or listening. Obviously, Hayden has a mustache. That is bringing awareness for November and Men's Health Awareness Month. So always a good thing there. And Hayden, another thing to remember too is we have a new partner as well. We have a foundation that is close to the SMU family, the SMU community, and that is the LaLa Land Foundation. And this is a really exciting opportunity for us to make a difference, to help a movement that LaLa Land, the foundation, is bringing to communities across the country. And it's an extension of LaLa Land Cafe. If you're not familiar with LaLa Land Cafe, you can find more information in our podcast description, episode description of LaLa Land Cafe. They're all around Dallas now. They're all around the country, and really the goal is to bring kindness to everybody's front doorstep. And really, with the foundation, it is about helping transition youth into adulthood as they age out of the foster care system. So the great thing about this foundation is you can support financially, you can support with your time, you can become a corporate partner. And that's really what we're trying to do with LaLa Land is just create awareness and create an opportunity for people to make a difference with a foundation that is really doing some great things in the world and creating a movement of kindness, and not necessarily doing it for clout or anything other than, hey, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to help people get on track and have the best chance to be successful coming out of what is usually a tough situation. So excited to partner with them, and who knows, maybe it's the first of many foundation partnerships for us here on the Pony Express. So excited about that, and excited to see yet another senior class that has accomplished so much over the course of their careers walk on senior day. Again, here we are, 11 a.m. for the however many times this season at home, but it is going to be quite the experience for these seniors to get honored before the game. I remember standing out there before last year's class was honored, and you just look up and down the names, and it just really kind of hit home that there were going to be a lot of great players that needed to be replaced. And I know that'll hit home with me again on Saturday morning, and I know for the most part, Hayden, you can look back on senior day and you will always have a unique story with yours. But what are these guys going through this week, kind of preparing for senior day, all the tickets, the family, the extracurriculars that are going on with a weekend like this?
I think it's something that is hard to be explained if you haven't been through it. So my earlier years at SMU, I was like, oh, senior day, last home game for these guys, kind of one of those, I get it, but I don't get it situations. So my senior year in 2021, the closer I got, the more you realize the kind of finality of the situation, of, okay, this is my last game at Ford Stadium in front of what for a lot of guys who return back to Dallas, my hometown, my family. There's no guarantees after this that I'm going to be able to play in the National Football League or XFL or put on a helmet at all after this. I mean, you're hoping you're going to go play for an ACC championship, play in a great bowl game, but ultimately it'll be your last time in the Weber End Zone complex to put your own pads on and get ready to go play a game. So it's one of those things that is emotional in that sense, but I think it also adds a little bit of the pressure to the situation to go get a win on senior day, to go out on the right note. My senior day is certainly one to forget, but we'll tell the story anyways. As we're playing on Saturday, Tulsa Golden Hurricanes coming to town. You know, the season we
Boring.
started 7-0. We were 1-3 in the 4 games after that. And we see on the ticker, and everybody starts getting ESPN notifications, Sonny Dykes leaving to become the head coach of the TCU Horned Frogs. And of course, everybody's the kind of shock and awe of the situation kind of spreads through the buses. Everybody gets their stuff, goes up to the rooms. The interesting thing about that is Coach Dykes was not on the bus for that one, and that was probably on purpose. So no one really saw him until the team meeting that night. Even so, you go typically put your bags down, you go to the room, you come back down, you eat dinner. And usually we're watching the Friday night football game. Well, the TCU Horned Frogs happened to be playing on Friday night, and so guys were like, "Put that game on!" And they were getting. I don't remember who they were playing. It was probably one of those Kansas State beatdowns that they're famous for. I mean, they were getting destroyed, and guys are like cheering, like standing on the tables. I mean, it was honestly, it was really funny. But and then for Coach Dykes to get up and kind of address it in the team meeting, but he a little bit deflected it by having the seniors get up there, and so I talked and I did get emotional, kind of standing in front of the team and things like that. Other guys did too. It's kind of one of those like, it sounds ingenuine saying like, "I love you guys. This was the best 4 or 5 years of my life," but it is something that holds true even to this day. I mean, I played 2.5 years after SMU, and I didn't have as much fun as I did in my 5 years in Dallas. So that was the pregame situation. Rick Hart also called me that night and was like, "Hey, do you want Sonny on the sidelines for this game tomorrow? With everything going on." And I kind of was like, "Look, it's my senior day. He was my head coach for 4 years. I think he needs to be there, if anything, selfishly for me." Because we still had a great relationship. I mean, I was the one dude who had Thanksgiving at his house in 2021. It wasn't announced that he was gone yet, but the writing was on the wall. And I still went over there and like hung out with him and Kate and everyone else. So I was like, yeah, I still want him on the sideline. Did I think they were going to parade him down the boulevard? No, I did not think that was going to happen. But so they roll him out there for senior day. My parents are out there. Like my mom's crying, my dad's crying, I'm crying. It's a very emotional moment. And then we roll out against Tulsa. We're winning at halftime. And then everybody quits on the team because Sonny's leaving. Guys are taking their pads off in the locker room at halftime. Starting receivers. Guys that I'm not going to throw under the bus on this podcast, but is a little bit like, dude, we fought for 4 years for this, and now you're just going to take your pads off at halftime? And we end up blowing a lead. Tulsa becomes bowl eligible. We lose. And then the bowl game gets canceled, and that was it. That was the last football game for me at SMU. So I'm looking back on it now of like, well, that sucked, but I had 5 years minus one game that were great, but obviously a really different situation than these seniors are walking into on Saturday. What I'm expecting on Saturday, it's going to be more of a celebration of guys' careers. We don't have an official list, Billy, of who's going to be walking, who's not. I'm anticipating that if guys are 50-50, they're probably going to walk just to essentially play it safe. They had given us that option in 2020 if we had ended up playing that last home game against U of H. That one didn't end up happening for COVID, but I would have ended up walking twice if that game would have ended up happening. So I could see that happening for a couple of people. We'll get the list. We'll talk about it with you guys next week, kind of about on our recap, what we expect. We'll definitely get into it at the end of the season on the pieces that are going to need to be replaced. But ultimately, it should be a very fun day against a very good opponent at Ford Stadium. We're hoping it's going to be rocking. Coach Lashley begged the students to fly out on Sunday before the Thanksgiving break. So go to the game at 11 a.m. and then get on the plane later that night, because it should be a really fun day for this senior class.
Well, and look, it'll absolutely be a fun day. It'll be a fun afternoon. It'll be a fun night. There's a lot of opportunities to have a good time. And then, like Coach Lashley said, jump on Status Jet and fly out for that Thanksgiving weekend. Nothing says SMU like staying for the football game and saying, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I gotta use Status Jet. We get a discount with our friends at On the Pony Express for the round trip flight. So why don't you even maybe think about making it a multi-leg trip? You could fly home, then fly on to Cal, and then back to Dallas with our friends at Status Jet." So reach out to them today, statusjet.com, for more information on how you can get that discount and be treated in an incredible way with a first-class trip, thanks to our friends at Status Jet. So again, listen to Coach Lashley and book a flight, but don't just book a flight, book with Status Jet. And look, you talk about senior day and parading Sonny Dykes down the street. I mean, they might as well have thrown him in the brand new pickup truck from our friends at Thomas Auto Group and let him stand up there with Rick Hart and rolled him down the boulevard. The new Ford trucks are on the lots, hitting the lots for our friend Brandon Thomas and company at the Thomas Auto Group. So make sure you head up 75 McKinney and be ready to be that option for SMU if they've ever need it again. But hopefully not. Hopefully you'll be riding in style for the holidays in a new vehicle from our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. So mention on the Pony Express, get employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles at the Thomas Auto Group. So make sure you head up 75 McKinney and check them out today.
At Thomas Auto Group, the Thomas Promise includes the low price promise,
the pre-owned promise,
and the 72-hour exchange promise.
and finally, the 100% customer satisfaction promise. So shop Thomas Auto Group today, home of the Thomas Promise.
Hey,
Get a shiny new vehicle, or SMU can walk home with a shiny new trophy for the ACC, very first one.
Ooh,
Men's soccer wins the first ACC title for SMU since joining the league last August. I didn't end up watching this game. I was watching hoops and I was getting ready for a little Friendsgiving right before I was shaving the stash. But I did end up seeing all the aftermath of it. This is so awesome for this university, for that program. Our men's soccer team is not a program that just out of the blue, got a hot streak and all of a sudden is just able to go on this run. They have been essentially a dominant force since I've been around. I mean, Billy, I don't know about when you were in school, but over the last 7-8 years that I've been around SMU, it seems like our men's and women's soccer programs just have a ton of momentum. And it's really cool to see that pay off with the school's first ACC championship.
Yeah. And for them to be the first is really special. And I think maybe Jordan Hoffeditz made this point, one of our contributors at On the Pony Express and writes for SMU. He made the point that, Kevin Hudson, with him being, a player, having played at SMU, coached at SMU, been through so much with this school and the soccer program always being one of those top programs, that it was kind of a deserved, deal for them to be the first ACC championship across all these sports. And really, really cool to see Coach Hudson also take the stage and mention that, SMU is here to stay. This isn't, oh, wow, look at SMU coming out of nowhere to win the ACC championship. No, they've always been a competitive soccer program. They've really been top notch. Look, I'll be honest, when I was a student, I had a lot going on, didn't necessarily pay too much attention like we do now, but I can tell you they were always among the top programs, at least when we were in school, and have always been kind of always a talked about team on campus. So this is really, really special to do it in a shutout, 1-0 against the top seeded Virginia Cavaliers. Pretty cool moment there for Coach Hudson and that team. And they get the 5 seed now. They play Sunday evening in Dallas on the Hilltop. So really cool opportunity for them to make a run in the tournament now.
Yeah, really, really awesome for them. I mean, I look at men's soccer winning the first ACC championship, and now I look at who's next.
Yeah.
Because obviously football, as we talk about every week, has a serious opportunity to, but who I look at as could be the sleeper pick is our volleyball program. This past weekend on Sunday, they upset number 5 Stanford on the road in California. As you look at the job that Sam Erger has done in building the momentum that this program really deserves with the talent pool that is in the state of Texas for volleyball, paired with the fact that SMU gets a lot of pipeline from the state of California, of you're able to accumulate all of this talent, you're able to coach it at a high level. Are we an everything school is what I'm starting to wonder, because with football, basketball, volleyball, soccer, I mean, it certainly is looking that way right now.
Well, and the ACC SMU, you couldn't have football success and basketball. You couldn't have basketball with football. It was always kind of a, ping ping pong type of back and forth between the success of the two programs. But now the commitment, and Kevin Hudson mentioned this too, the commitment level from this university to be successful in all sports is there. It is just something that isn't going to be messed around with. They're going to go after it and heavily pursue excellence and championships and all of those things in this new era. I mean, look at how fast they got the new goalpost up for football. And I don't know if people saw it, but Jay Hartzell tweeted that he cannot confirm or deny really whether they're taller goalposts, kind of a shot at the field goal that may or may not have been in against Miami. But quite the time there to see the president trolling ACC officials. But this is a school that is on the rise. And speaking of on the rise, I mean, I think the basketball team getting that win over Butler on Saturday was a huge deal. And we can talk about, okay, fall behind early or almost blow it, and kind of did blow it for a second there. And then they draw something up and they get a bucket and are able to survive and get past Butler to improve to 4-0 and kind of guarantee themselves. I don't want to say guarantee, but you're really in a good spot now to be like a 7-0. I think it would be 7-0 going into that game against Mississippi State Friday afternoon or early evening in Starkville after Thanksgiving, lining up really nicely for SMU to have quite the finish here to this pre-SEC slate of hoops.
Yeah, we'll be there later this week at a couple of the basketball games, so we will have a little dinner later this week, which will be really nice with a couple of our friends. But really cool for this basketball program to see where Moody Coliseum is heading back to, as well as kind of that Moody magic is starting to come alive again. As this past week, Coach Enfield talked about the student involvement as the arena was just alive on Saturday. I watched it on TV. I wasn't there personally, but you could feel that energy even just through the screen. It obviously made a difference. I mean, Butler made some insane plays down the stretch, but SMU was able to kind of get the momentum back. You're able to get that last second bucket that just ended up being huge. I mean, Butler still was able to attempt a last second 3-point attempt to try to go win that game. But to come out of that stretch 4-0, you've got Butler behind you. You've got a couple games coming up here that you should win going into that game against Mississippi State. It'll be interesting to see how this SMU basketball team ends up in 2025 before they hit conference slate next year.
No question about it. So lots of good things happening on the Hilltop. I know women's basketball obviously trying to bounce back here. They're headed out to Arizona, I believe, for a big non-conference game. So quite the test there for Adia Barnes and her crew. But look, it was a great weekend. I know you put this in the note. Big circle over Mickey Mouse and company getting things done with YouTube TV. And this was a massive savior for this weekend, because you had Georgia Tech, BC all of a sudden becoming a game. And during that, Bama and Oklahoma are battling it out. And I'm like, I look, thanks a lot, BC, for making this happen and giving us some excitement, but also got to see if Oklahoma can pull this off. And they did. We'll get to coast to coast, but shout out Mickey Mouse and company.
Needed the quad box for this weekend, and we got it, thankfully.
You know what I can't understand, though, is why things with YouTube TV on the quad box aren't as easy as they are with our friends at Game Time. It's shocking to me that you can't easily pick the entire quad box, but that is a different discussion for a different podcast. We are talking about our friends at Game Time and how you can get $20 off your first purchase by working with our friends at Game Time. And Game Time makes it incredibly easy to pick your tickets for your favorite games, concerts, comedy series, and more. This is one of my favorite apps just to kind of bounce around and scroll for different ticket opportunities. I'm one of those people that looks at different events and says, okay, well, how much is it? Is it a good value? And can I get in there and let me see if the prices will drop and maybe I'll go last minute. Well, that's perfect for Game Time, because the Game Time app allows you to browse around and find the ticket that you want at a fast, easy process and find that great price. So love the zone deals, love the favorites portion of the app where you can get alerts about your favorite teams or events. And of course, you can get the seat views as well. But the best thing about it is that fees are included. So you know your total up front. There are no surprise fees at checkout. So make sure you go to the Game Time app, download it, and create your account and use code ON3. That's ON, the number 3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Create that account and redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Look, that's because we don't have a film room, Hayden. And we really, next year, you know what? For bye weeks, we might have to sneak into the opposing team's football facility and raid a little bit of their film clips to make things happen. But we'll attack that next year on the pod and see what we can get our hands on. But it's a perfect segue into Coast to Coast and getting you guys teed up with great tickets. And you can browse those SMU Louisville tickets or whatever you guys want to look for while we rerun a kind of what ended up being a low-key ACC weekend, but also a fun college football weekend.
It was a great college football weekend. The ACC looked a little weak this past weekend. I do want to start with us as College Game Day traveled to the Pittsburgh Panthers. You had that incredible backdrop of the Steel City. Notre Dame was in town. Aaron Donald was the guest picker. I mean, there was a lot going for the Pitt Panthers pregame. But ultimately, once the ball was kicked off, I mean, it was all Notre Dame after that. I mean, Jeremiah Love came out. He looked like a Heisman running back, 147 yards on the ground. I mean, a disgusting spin move, spit a 56-yard touchdown run. I mean, Pitt had no answers for that. And look, I've talked about previously in what I'm looking for about the expectations that go into each football game. And I think Pat Narduzzi just pregame completely downplayed this game. It was way too much in the other direction. You never want to come into a game overly tight because, oh, wow, this is such a huge game. We're on College Game Day. But he said, and I quote, they can get beat by 100 as long as they win the next two. And I understand his point, but you made it okay to lose, and Pitt certainly played like it. It was really an embarrassing performance for Pitt. Overall, it doesn't matter as far as the ACC championship race. Coach Narduzzi is right about that. But we had the opportunity to knock Notre Dame out of the playoff. If Notre Dame would have suffered another loss, they'd have been kicked to the curb, and maybe that would have opened the door for another multi-bid ACC or Big 12. But now Notre Dame is looking like they're going to eat up one of those spots.
Yeah, this was a game that, man, I'm glad you brought up what Pat Narduzzi said, because on one hand, I get what he was trying to say, which was, look, this isn't a huge game for us. We've got the ACC. That's much more important to us is winning a conference championship, blah, 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 blah. But look, if you're trying to also make it to the college football playoff, if you win out and you win the ACC, you've got a good shot to get in. But no one was giving you the benefit of the doubt of quarterback change. Nobody was giving you the benefit of the doubt in rankings going into this game. Everybody was sitting there saying, hey, they're going to have to prove it. They're going to have to prove it that they're the best team in the ACC by beating a top 10 Notre Dame team. And with that in mind, you needed to come away with this win because you're looking at the ACC and you're trying to say, okay, we're going to help you. We're going to help you out and help get you into the college football playoff, where going into this weekend, there was a little bit of that conversation around, what's going to happen with the ACC. With Pitt, they could have made a statement. And look, this isn't their year to do that. It's very clear. They were not nearly good enough to beat Notre Dame on Saturday in a multitude of ways. And I thought the defense held up and kind of gave them a chance until, the offense just couldn't. Kind of felt like watching a little bit of like, maybe like the transformational period at various points over the last 15 years or so of SMU football, where whether it be June Jones or Chad Morris or Sonny Dykes or even Rhett Lashley in the first year, where you're kind of seeing, oh wow, okay, the team's kind of hanging around, they're keeping it closer. Oh, look at this week, the defense stepped up and it's 14-3 at half or whatever it was at one point in that game. And then kind of the dam breaks because the offense couldn't keep up and couldn't do it and couldn't get anything past this Notre Dame defense, really. So kudos to Notre Dame. It is a quality win. I thought this was going to be a lot closer than the final score. I thought this was going to be a lot closer in general, but it doesn't shake my belief that Pitt should, and this is a big ask and a heavy lift, but I think Pitt should go on the road to Georgia Tech and be able to come away with that win. I mean, that's a Georgia Tech team that can't stop anything right now. And Mason Heinschel, if he can flush this one and bounce back, I think they'll still be in the race for the conference championship like Pat Narduzzi ultimately wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech can't stop a nosebleed right now. I mean, they gave up 537 yards to Boston College after giving up 583 yards to NC State in their last game. And they had an extra week to prepare for Boston College. And this is the same Boston College that we boat raced last week. But look, they just came out sleepwalking. They trailed 28-17 late in the third quarter. Kudos to them as they took it all the way to the end. Georgia Tech kicks a game-winning field goal with 11 seconds left. Obviously, they have some mental toughness, but they are playing bad football at the worst time with that game coming up against Pitt. Maybe I'm not saying Pitt overlooked a college game day game, but what I am saying is, okay, if Pat Narduzzi was saying it's okay to lose this one, maybe they were spending some resources getting ready for the Yellow Jackets. But look, when you look at the ACC's path, and I do want to talk about this a little bit, this is a huge game coming up for Pitt and Georgia Tech. If Georgia Tech wins, they're in Charlotte. It does not matter what happens last game of the year against Georgia. If Pitt wins, that's great for SMU. And you still got to see what happens over the next 2 weeks for this SMU Mustang team. As I think you've said it, I've said it, you have to win out in order to give yourself any kind of remote chance with how many of these tiebreakers are going to work out and things like that. But I don't know how bought in I am to this whole Georgia Tech is obviously the best team in the ACC.
I'm glad you said that. I've just talking to a couple people around college football. It now seems like, and I still think Virginia is playing with fire. I just think Duke is just not that good. And I mean, the record supports that. So I don't think that's a crazy statement to say. They're just average, middle of the road. They're going to make a bowl most likely, and that'll be fine for them. That's great. It's not as great of an ROI on Darian Mensah as they probably would have liked, but that's college football these days. But with Georgia Tech's defense playing as poorly as they are in league play in particular, I don't want to say this like this, but there's not many conference champions that have as poor defensive play as Georgia Tech does. Yeah. And unless they change that really quickly, obviously this weekend is most important for Georgia Tech to change that and change that narrative. They're going to lose this football game this weekend and be on the outside looking in for the ACC championship, be on the outside looking in for obviously a college football playoff. And then they've got to play Georgia, who is just proving to everybody that they're still one of the best teams in the country, and they're going to be that way for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, you can also point to the fact that Georgia Tech was on the road the last 2 weeks. They do get 2 home games to finish out the year. They play Pitt in Atlanta, and then the Bulldogs have to hop down 95 and come down to Atlanta as well. So I anticipate both of those games being extremely close. I think even if Georgia Tech goes and gets embarrassed next week against Pitt, I still think in rivalry week they're going to make it close. But as we'll get to later in Coast to Coast, Georgia is playing its best football right now. That could be a game that gets ugly for the ACC. And I have to think about this as an overall conference picture. So I'm going to pivot and talk about Duke for a second. Duke losing was good for the ACC.
100%.
Because it prevents that doomsday scenario where your 4-loss ACC champion gets left out of the playoff. Now, like you said earlier, I was not a believer in Duke. I don't think they're a good football team. UVA really exposed them as the 5-loss team that they are. I think they could even go 6-6, just kind of depending on how the next game goes. But it was 31-3 at one point. Duke made that score look a little bit better. You know, they got a pick 6 late, and I say that Chandler Morris actually played pretty well for coming off of that upper head and neck injury that he had last week. He's a really tough kid, and he led the Cavaliers to 540 yards. He did throw 2 interceptions, the pick 6, and then he had another one. could be something to look for if SMU faces the Cavaliers in the ACC championship game. But overall, that was the performance you needed from Virginia to prove to the rest of the landscape of, all right, Duke was not for real to begin with.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp on Duke too much because I felt like they weren't for real, for most of the season, and obviously, like, you look at losing to Illinois. Illinois was a trendy college football playoff kind of sleeper pick early in the season. You have Tulane, who was the pick to be the representative of the group of five when they lost to them, and that was on the road as well. But man, losing to UConn, like, inexcusable. Just not that far into the season, not year two. I think year two of the Manny Diaz era. I'm pretty sure it's year two. I think they turned it around pretty quickly in year one. And so you kind of look at Duke and you're just like, all right, now you're kind of hanging around this mediocrity, which Duke is fine with. I think that staff is got to be a little disappointed in where things stand this year, and to get beat like they did on their home field as well was disappointing for, as much Chandler Morris, Highland Park Magic, whatever you want to call it, was out there playing around in Durham over the weekend. This was a Virginia team that didn't have its starting quarterback for much of the week in practice. You obviously spent up for yours. So it was kind of a statement opportunity for Duke, and they just kind of let it slip away after a poor performance the week prior against UConn.
Yeah, I mean, Chandler Morris, the Highland Park Magic, if you want to call it that. I think you also just have to look at this Virginia defense and how they played. I mean, this is a Duke offense that at one point in the season, I think was a little concerning, especially with how this SMU offense had been playing, or this SMU defense had been playing, excuse me. But their offense just has fallen apart recently. The UConn loss was bad. I mean, they played really well at Clemson, but Clemson's defense has not been what anybody expected around college football this year with the talent that they have. But I just look at the conference as it sits right now, and I think SMU is in as good of a spot as it can be. Unfortunately, with that 1-point loss to Wake Forest, you're having to see how the next couple weeks play out. You have to win out, and you have to get some help at this point with some tiebreakers. You're hoping that some upsets happen. But Billy, I'll tell you what, and we're a couple weeks away. If we get left out of the ACC championship game at 7-1 on a 1-point loss to Wake Forest, I'm gonna call for some change, because that's some BS.
I mean, look, SMU is, they made their bed when it comes to the non-conference. So you can't even like point to it and see like, hey, come on, like, how did this happen? But when you get these huge conferences, this is why you need 9 games. You need one more data point, because think about if every single one of these teams that are at this, win-loss situation here had one more game to address some of these things. Odds are it would have been addressed. Now, maybe there's more chaos, or maybe there's a need for something else. But you're seeing the SEC work itself out, here late, and it's creating some great drama as well for them late in the season. For the ACC, it's kind of creating like drama, and people are talking about it. But because they're at an 8-game conference schedule, there's more of a concern around, well, why is this going to be the resolution versus, having a competitive race. So it'll be nice when the league moves to 9 games. And look, when you're doing that and you're thinking about all those teams that SMU or whatever program you support is going to have to face, you're going to want to make sure they're well-funded and well-supported. And that's why our friends at Sportsmo are a revolutionary way to support college athletics. You can do micro donations and pledge money for plays, whether it be touchdowns, sacks, wins, all of those things on the field that you want to kind of bet with your buddies about, or, kind of pressure your friends into, maybe throwing some money down on. You can do that with our friends at Sportsmo. So download the Sportsmo app today. Here's the thing, guys. I downloaded it today. I connected it through my Gmail, and you go right in here, and I'm going to try to hold this up, but it took me 2 seconds to select SMU, right? We went there, and you click up here, little handy dandy wallet thing, and you click add funds, pop in $10, Apple Pay, boom, done. Double click, and you've added the funds to your wallet. And then you have your ability then to start making your pledge to the game. So here it is, right up at the top, 11 a.m. If those of you who don't know, SMU Louisville. If SMU defeats Louisville, you'll donate $1, $5, $10, other, and you can pressure your friends into doing this as well. So download Sportsmo today. Go to sportsmo.org. Super easy. I'm sure Hayden just downloaded it as we were doing the pod, and you can create your own chat and talk trash to your friends and say, hey, I've got $5 going right to SMU athletics if SMU wins. I've got $10 if we get a sack. I've got $5 on us scoring 3 touchdowns. I'll donate 25 if we score 5 this weekend against Louisville. All those things, easy way to support your team and feel and know that you're making a difference. And by the way, in today's day and age, it's all tax deductible too. So there's the TED Talk. We've got the ad as well, of course, but we show that a lot on the podcast. I wanted to show you guys how easy it was to sign up, add funds to your wallet, and go right into it with our friends at Sportsmo. So appreciate them. Sportsmo.org for more information. So speaking of well-funded, Hayden,
I was so upset.
The Aggies are finally putting it together. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Y'all know I love knocking Texas A&M.
This is right down in your neck of the woods.
It is. And this is part of the reason why. Everybody and their mother that I know is a Texas A&M Aggie. And I have loved the inevitable downfall of the Maroons every single year. But for whatever reason, I was dancing on their graves at halftime of this game.
Oh no. You were were you texting people like, hey BC, look at BC?
I was not. So I have some people, and this is somebody we've interviewed before on this show, was texting me, and I was like, please stop talking.
Stop. Don't do it.
But South Carolina Gamecocks, if y'all missed it, led 30-3 at the break. A&M put together 4 straight touchdown drives in the second half, and the Aggie defense shuts out Lenore Sellers in the second half. Gamecocks get the ball, 2:35 left in the fourth quarter. They try to win this game. They can't respond. Lenore Sellers looks ridiculous on the last 2 plays that they had. But SEC teams had lost 286 straight when down by 27 plus since 2004. Nobody had ever overcome that big of a deficit. Largest comeback since 2004 in the SEC, largest comeback in A&M history, as the Aggies are unfortunately 10-0 for the first time since 1992. So I look at it and I think there's a lot of situations that still need to play out, but I think A&M is essentially a lock in the playoff at this point.
I know a few people down there at Texas A&M, and I am thrilled for them, because I will say this, and I don't know if you'll agree or if maybe this doesn't matter, but if you're asking me right now who, let's just say you preyed on your enemy's downfall, right? Texas is kind of that more hateable program right now. And I like Arch, but the Flash, Sark, kind of little bit of whininess going on. I mean, he had some quote today about, somebody said, well, you've kind of underachieved. And he goes, really? According to who? And they were like, you were number 1 in the preseason poll. And he was like, well, we played top 10 teams or whatever. Anyway, Mike Elko, I think the world of, because he's just going out there and just getting it done. Now, here's the thing that I'll add. More Aggies should take his mindset on how to approach their football team being successful. And I think we all could learn a lot from that. But he's finally at least put it together on the field, off the field, kind of meshing the talent that has been brought in College Station, added some key pieces this offseason, and has them playing at a really, really high level. And so, I respect what they're doing down there at College Station. But yes, it is also knowing that SMU is kind of hanging around, this season in particular, relevancy by staying in the ACC championship race, for A&M to be number 3 in the country and Texas to be, top 15 is just, gosh,
Grinds my
like
gears so much.
it could have cleared the way for SMU to at least be like, okay, SMU's in the conference championship race. Texas is too, but usually by this time of year, A&M's gone, and that would leave Tech and Texas and SMU.
It is fun having 4
Yeah,
Texas
really
schools
good teams.
be top
3
25
really good
teams.
teams. SMU's
Yeah, really 5 with UNT.
yeah.
But it is fun having so many teams from the state be top teams in the country. And what I'll give to A&M, at least all of their fans either went there or their parents went there. They have some family connection to it. At my state championship reunion, I had somebody who didn't show up because he's like, "Oh, I'm going to the Texas game tomorrow." I was like, did you or anybody else go to Texas? Like, why are you skipping this?" And that's just kind of some Texas Longhorn fans. I'll get off my soapbox. I'm hating 100% of being a huge hater of the other 2 big in-state schools, but I just can't help it, man. It grinds my gears watching A&M be successful because of their history of doing less with more, and the fact that every season is national championship or bust. Now, like you said, Mike Elko has done a phenomenal job as the head coach. Cannot be understated how well of a job he has done. But I digress. I'm not sold on the fact they're going to win the national championship.
I'm not either, but I'm getting pretty close. And look, there's only one way to handle that if things go south and Texas A&M does capture the national championship, and that is to go to Mignon, sit and enjoy a quiet, peaceful meal with Nick Natur, former SMU offensive lineman, and his family. Talk about our sorrows. I'm sure there's going to be Aggies in there renting out the private room or whatever, throwing a big party. But hey, they would be wise to do that. Mignon has been producing great meals for years and years and years in Plano now. So make sure you head up Preston Road or, just pull in off Preston Road, whether you're coming from the north or the south, and visit Mignon in Plano. It's an incredible dining experience right there on the little lakefront right there. They've got, the bar, they've got brunch on Sundays, but they serve dinner 7 days a week, an incredible wine program. Really excited to partner with them and appreciate their continued support of the On the Pony Express podcast. During the course of the offseason, we want to do some fun things with them as well, and maybe create a little end of the year kind of party that we get On the Pony Express folks together and kind of do it big and celebrate all of you guys who have spent time supporting Hayden and I. So, we'll be in touch with more details on that, but appreciative of Mignon, and we know they would take great care of us there, of course.
They do, and they're great. I will need lots of wine if all the Aggies are there celebrating.
Oh man, and look, their Aggie tiers are good. Alabama tiers are pretty strong when the Tide lose the way they did at home to Oklahoma, one of the quote unquote newbies of the SEC, but a really strong showing from Oklahoma's defense really just slowed down Ty Simpson and that Tide offense in a big way.
Yeah, Oklahoma's 2-0 against Alabama as members of the SEC, and Brent Venables, a couple of years ago, people were talking about, is he the answer? This is not what we expected from him, and he's showed up in a big way this year. I know they still lost to Texas, and to a lot of Oklahoma fans, that is going to be the cardinal sin for them. But to be able to go out on the road in Tuscaloosa and beat an Alabama team that now is going to have to beat an Auburn team on really 3 weeks rest. I look at Alabama as one of these. Will they get in the playoff? Probably, but you also look at the cursed history that the Crimson Tide has had at Jordan-Hare Stadium of, I don't know at this point. Will it open up another spot in the playoff is yet to be determined, but a huge win for the program for Oklahoma to go on the road and get a win of that caliber.
Yeah, I saw a good deal of this one, and I think for me, I think Oklahoma was without R. Mason Thomas as well, so it makes it even more impressive. I was among the people that was sitting there saying, let's see how this plays out with Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer. If it didn't work, I was ready to be all right, this is the defensive version of Chad Morris right here. Just no offense. Like, just it's okay. He's a little bit more successful at a higher level. There's no question about it. But I think the shtick was going to wear thin with some OU fans if they didn't have the season that they expected to have this year. Now with this win over Alabama, fully expecting OU to end up in the college football playoff. I mean, they end with LSU and they face Missouri this weekend. So kind of a difficult, or I should say kind of tedious slate to finish up with. But nonetheless, OU looks like they're going to head to the playoff. And here's the thing, John Mateer could be getting healthy finally. And maybe with a layoff between the end of the season and that home playoff game, or maybe, just home, playoff game in general, maybe that really helps them hit another gear, because that defense, it's kind of the opposite of Georgia Tech. They've got the hosses and, the dogs to handle things up front.
Yeah. Speaking of the dogs, Georgia pulled away late from Texas. It was very close for a minute. I was surprised at how well Texas played in this game, but Georgia just hit another gear late in this one, as they just pulled away. 35-10 was the final of this one. I think that kind of drives the nail in the coffin for the Texas Longhorns as far as the college football playoff comes. And the fans took to social media as well. I mean, they were all over that as well, of, hey, the season's over at this point. Now, they're going to be a very dangerous team if they've got nothing to lose when they play at home against A&M in the last game of the year after Thanksgiving. But Longhorns are out of it at this point. Georgia proved that they deserve to be in the SEC championship and obviously be a top 5 team in the country like they are. But Kirby's smart. I loved his response post game. Kirby is an old school coach.
He's a dog.
He's a dog. In one of these eras where Nick Saban's retired, you're kind of getting into some of this new school coaching, and Kirby is just a dog, man. There's no other way to say it.
He loves to have a good time in the offseason too. That's what I respect about him. He has a good time, man. I mean, he's getting well compensated. He has the ability to have a good time. And look, there's something to be said for working hard and playing hard. So, and I mean that in like a completely guy goes out and gets on the golf course, fishes, spends time with family, takes vacation, just he's living right. I mean, you check up and down the Florida Panhandle, and he's somewhere in there in the off season a good bit.
Kirby lives the life we all want to live, man.
Yeah, I know, man. Talk about a film room. Look, the American, talk about some film that you've studied from back in your playing days. Familiar with this league, of course, and Navy does it again, just ruining somebody's hopes and dreams in Annapolis. I don't even know if this was senior day, but it had senior day written all over it. And yes, it was. So Navy continues to be unbelievable on senior days.
This league just can't help itself. I mean, there's a part of me that misses that about the American. Obviously, I much prefer the ACC, but American will always hold a special place in my heart, as it is my conference that I was able to play in. But hey, Annapolis is a really tough place to play with the midshipmen everywhere, the flyovers of the Hornets. It's a really cool place to go and play football. And USF just had, they were overwhelmed at this point. It was a very close game, but 1,000 yards of offense in this game. And when you have the triple option that puts up 500 yards of offense, it feels like you don't touch the ball. I mean, South Florida scored quickly, but that even more played in the Navy's hands. They've just put these long, sustained drives together that just wears you out. I could tell when Navy gets rolling and they're able to pick up these, 4th and shorts, they keep the defense on the field for a long time. It's hard to beat the midshipmen, especially at home.
It is, and now that leads to James Madison sitting atop the Group of 5 standings, according to the AP poll. We'll see what the college football playoff rankings comes out with. They get a win over App State, 58-10. Cincinnati falls at home in a Big 12 showdown with Arizona. Pretty disappointing game for Cincinnati to lose, in my opinion, at least. Just not the finish necessarily that they really want, but let's get to the main event, and that is BYU, the Stormin' Mormons, getting a win over everybody's favorite team to hate watch, TCU.
Happy no-win November to all my TCU fans as we're underway, just a couple games in. But
We're underway. The ship has
Horn-
sailed.
Horned Frogs, they get crushed on the road in Provo. And look, BYU is a damn good team. We saw that last year.
Yeah.
And Provo's a very tough place to play. Quick story about them. They said when we eventually make the return trip to BYU, when I sat around a bunch of BYU fans last year, they're like, we'll get you guys some drinks next year. I was like, what do you mean? Like water? Like there's going to be nothing to drink in Provo. But 44-13, they're outclassed in basically every way. The most embarrassing thing in this game was Sonny was asked post game about why the team appears to be heading in the wrong direction. His response, and I quote, "People can say what they want to say." Brutal. I don't. No accountability. There's no answer for it. Basically, like, yeah, people can say what they want to say is crazy.
You want to know what I think would be? I think would be really funny. I don't think it'd necessarily be good for SMU, but and this is not. I will say this: this is not going to happen. But could you imagine if Sonny was like, just feeling the heat here. I'm just gonna go. I'm going to Stillwater. I'm more of a Stillwater guy. Like let's just roll up there and just bounce to Oklahoma State and just hit the reset button.
His seat is not hot, though.
But,
I mean, his seat's on fire right now.
They can't. I don't think they could pay him to go away. I mean, even if they lost out the rest of the way, which TCU's remaining schedule, they could lose out. It's
at Houston and Cincinnati at home.
Yes, very possible they can lose out. It screams to me that even if they lose out and it's like, okay, TCU should fire him. Remember, you have Josh Hoover. You're wasting Josh Hoover, which is just unbelievable because he's a stud. But if you don't fire him now, I feel like you're going to be firing him halfway through next season.
I agree. But I don't think they're going to. I think what's going to happen, in my opinion, is they're going to do a complete overhaul of the staff. He's going to try to save his job for one more year, and that's going to be probably even worse if you fire your entire offensive staff, some of your defensive staff as well. I'm not sure which is the problem, honestly, because both sides of the ball is getting their ass kicked right now. Yep. And you're seeing both sides, both coordinators getting their head called for, especially Bryles. But the window's closing on the Dykes era in Fort Worth, so SMU fans, enjoy the mediocrity while you can, and then they will hit the hard reset. I would bet it's going to be in October of next year.
Yeah.
So,
but it won't be after the iron skillet, so we'll see how it goes. But look, it's I don't know. I don't know how he fumbled that roster that Gary Patterson handed to him, and it was kind of like you just needed to not overhaul too much of what Gary was doing, and then just kind of add your own flavor to it and kind of modernize it a little bit. But kind of wild. But
they have the third highest talent composite in the Big 12, though. It's not that they just fumbled this roster.
God, that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Or it's an indictment on the Big 12, because I think the bottom 25% of that TCU roster is like favors.
Yeah. Colorado's number 2, which, I mean, they're also pretty horrendous.
God. Wow.
BYU is 14th. Cincinnati is 16th. BYU is 14th. Houston is 12th. So if they lose out, it is going to be so bad of a look for them.
Oh, it's funny. And I tweeted a couple years ago, and it wasn't, in my opinion, it is kind of foreshadowing. Rhett got his first extension, and somebody tweeted something or whatever about how SMU noted the wins in November under Rhett, and I was like, oh, another difference is one signed an extension and one is on the hot seat. Now, it was probably a full year early, but there's two things. You can be on the hot seat and also be completely safe because they don't either can afford to fire you, or they just kind of can't, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Too many openings. Who are you going to get?
I don't know. They can do better than Sonny Dykes right now. Yeah, they can do better than Sonny Dykes.
So we start the podcast talking about being at his house at Thanksgiving, and we end it absolutely decimating him.
Oh, well, he's going to need somebody to join him this year. So, Hayden, it might as well be you. It might as well be you guys joining us on Thursday when we preview SMU Louisville Senior Day, 11 a.m. Central in Ford Stadium. We're excited for it, even though it is the early tilt. So for Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. Thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, and wherever you follow the podcast at, leave us a rating, a review. We appreciate our friends, Northwest Insurance Agency, Status Jet, Thomas Auto Group, and all of our sponsors out there. Thank you guys for making this podcast what it is, and we're excited to be back with you guys Thursday to break down SMU Louisville. For Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.